Some moments in history are too devastating to forget. These events don't just scar a community, they ripple through an entire nation, forever altering how we view our safety and the world around us. Today we are diving into 3 of the most shocking school shootings in modern history. Each one left a deep impact, and the echoes of these tragedies still resonate today. It was a bright Tuesday morning, April 20th, 1999, in Littleton, Colorado. Columbine High School students were gearing up for a regular day. Some were finishing last-minute homework, others catching up with friends in the hallways, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. But for 2 seniors, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, this day was anything but regular. For them, this was the climax of months of careful planning, a plan that would turn Columbine into a name synonymous with terror. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, 2 high school seniors with hidden rage, had spent months meticulously planning a massacre that would become one of the darkest days in American history. They weren't just coming to school that day with backpacks full of textbooks. Instead, they carried an arsenal of guns, bombs, and a burning hatred for their classmates. Eric and Dylan weren't just your typical high school outcasts, even though the media painted them that way at first. In reality, they were far from isolated. They had friends, they went to prom, and on the surface, they seemed somewhat normal, but inside, they were filled with anger, hatred, and a twisted desire for revenge. 18-year-old Harris was the more calculated of the 2. He was cold, detached, almost disturbingly methodical. 17-year-old Dylan, on the other hand, was the one battling inner demons, depression, and a sense of hopelessness. Together, they created a deadly duo. On April 20th, 1999, the pair didn't just intend to shoot their classmates. Oh no, their plan was far worse. They wanted to blow up the school. The first bell rang at 7:30 a.m. The school cafeteria was buzzing with students grabbing breakfast, teachers getting ready for their classes. Eric and Dylan had already planted 2 large propane bombs in the cafeteria, set to go off during the busiest time of the day. Can you imagine the horror if those bombs had actually gone off? Hundreds of students would have been killed instantly. The plan was horrific, but when the bombs failed to explode, Eric and Dylan switched to plan B, a shooting rampage that would last just under an hour, but leave an unimaginable scar on everyone involved. But how did 2 teenagers, once described as quiet, even shy, turn into cold-blooded killers? Their diaries would later reveal a chilling descent into violence, fueled by isolation, anger, and a desire to leave their mark on history. On that fateful morning, Eric and Dylan arrived at school, ready to unleash terror. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. They joined their classmates in the cafeteria, laughing and blending into the crowd. But at 11:19 a.m., everything changed. The deadly duo made their way to the school's west entrance, armed with shotguns and semi-automatic weapons. As the first shots rang out, initially most thought it was just a prank. Others thought they were paintball guns. But soon they realized this is no joke. Panic spread like wildfire. Students ran for their lives as the shooters moved through halls, targeting anyone in their path. Their first victim was Rachel Scott, a bright 17-year-old sitting outside on the grass with her friend Richard Castaldo, having lunch at the west entrance. The gunman threw a bomb which partially detonated, and Richard thought it was just seniors pulling cruel joke on them. But then they came closer and shot Rachel 4 times. She was the first to be shot and killed that day. The duo then turned the gun on Richard, shooting him 8 times, but miraculously Richard survived, but he's now paralyzed. They then entered the building, shooting at random in the hallways before heading to the library, the deadliest part of their rampage. Between 11:29 a.m. and 11:35 a.m., Eric and Dylan killed 10 students in the library. 10 innocent lives snuffed out in just 6 minutes. 6 minutes. I can't help but think of how much can change in a short amount of time. 10 families torn apart, hundreds of lives shattered. Among the victims was 17-year-old Cassie Barnell, whose story became a symbol of faith. Eric walked to a computer table at the library with 2 students underneath, asked if she believed in God. She reportedly said yes, right before they shot her in the head, killing her instantly. They continued their assault, and at the end, they had killed 10 people in the library and wounded 12. The 2 walked out of the library at 11:36, and the survivors used the opportunity to flee the library through the north emergency exit door. By 12:08, Eric and Dylan returned to the library and took their own lives. Everything was over. The toll of their actions was staggering. In the end, they killed 13 people, 12 students and 1 teacher, Dave Sanders, who died trying to save others, and over 20 more students were injured. Eric and Dylan left behind journals and videos that offered terrifying glimpses into their minds. They saw themselves as anti-heroes set on making history by carrying out a massacre. Well, I guess they made it, right? They were inspired by other mass killings, including the Oklahoma City bombing. Eric in particular fantasized about causing as much destruction as possible, while Dylan seemed more focused on ending his own life. At the end of the day, it wasn't about being bullied, as many initially believed. They weren't targeting specific people. It was about control, chaos, and the desire to make the world feel the pain they carried inside. In the days and weeks that followed, Columbine became more than just the name of a school. It became a symbol. The story is one that still resonates today, not just because of the horror that unfolded, but because it marks the beginning of a tragic cycle of school shootings in America. Each time a new incident occurs, we are forced to ask ourselves the same questions. What could have been done to stop it? Are we doing enough to protect our kids? Schools across the US implemented stricter security measures, and debates over gun laws erupted like never before. But the emotional scars left behind still linger for survivors and families of those who lost their lives. 16th of April 2007 was a day that began like any other on campus. Students rushing to class, professors preparing their lectures. But by 9:51 a.m., 32 innocent lives will be gone, countless others forever changed. This is what happened at Virginia Tech, where a bright spring morning quickly transformed into one of the darkest days in American history. And how could something like this happen? What could drive someone to such extreme violence? The name Sung-Hyo Cho still echoes through Virginia Tech. He was a 23-year-old student, a South Korean citizen with US permanent resident status, who was majoring in English. His parents worked at the dry cleaners in suburban Washington. He had been struggling with mental health issues for years, diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. He was quiet, isolated, and tormented by an internal struggle. No one truly understood. From the outside, he seemed withdrawn, but behind closed doors, he was fighting a war with his own mind. During much of his middle school and high school years, he received therapy and special education support. After graduating from high school, Cho enrolled at Virginia Tech, but because of federal privacy laws, the university was unaware of Cho's previous diagnosis, so he had been granted accommodation at school. His professors had noted disturbing writings, and his classmates felt unsettled by his presence. Despite all these warning signs, Cho was able to plan and carry out one of the deadliest acts of violence ever seen in an American college campus. Truly, how many times do we see people suffering silently around us? People we pass by every day, not realizing they are hanging on by a thread. That was true. He'd been struggling for years, showing clear signs of mental illness. But like so many others, he fell through the cracks. Cho had meticulously planned the attack over the course of weeks. He purchased firearms, ammunition, and chains to block exit. The first sign of trouble came early in the morning of April 16th when shots rang out in a dormitory called West Ambler Johnston Hall, a residence hall. At around 7:15 a.m., Cho entered the room of 19-year-old freshman Emily Hilscher and shot her. After hearing the gunshots, a resident assistant, 22-year-old senior Ryan Clark, attempted to help Emily when Cho shot and killed him. These two students marked the start of his killing spree. Cho left the scene and returned to his dorm room in Harper Hall, where he changed out of his blood-stained clothes, logged onto his computer, deleted his emails and his student university account, and then removed his hard drive. He then mailed videos and photos to the TV station NBC, including a self-made clip and images of himself posing with guns imitating a movie poster. Shockingly, the university did not immediately realize the gravity of the situation. No one could have guessed that these deaths were just the beginning of a massacre that would shake the entire nation. When police responded to these initial shootings, they assumed it was an isolated event, just another tragedy in a world full of them. A tragic altercation between roommates. Well, they were wrong. Horribly wrong. For over 2 hours, the campus went about its days as normal. Students went to class, professors taught. All the while, Cho quietly prepared for his next move, a more devastating phase of his attack. At 9:40 a.m., armed with two semi-automatic pistols, a Glock 19 and a Walther P22, Cho walked into Norris Hall, an academic building on the opposite side of the campus. It was here that the full scale of the horror would unfold. Norris Hall was a building full of classrooms and lecture halls. Using locks and chains, he chained the three main entrance doors shut and placed a note on one saying that attempting to open the door would cause a bomb to explode, creating a death trap for everyone inside. He then began shooting anyone in his path. The sound of gunshots echoed through the hallways. Students and professors trapped inside with nowhere to run. They tried everything, barricading doors, leaping from windows, doing anything to survive. Room after room, he opened fire on students and professors. One of those trapped in Norris Hall was Liviu Librescu, 76-year-old Holocaust survivor. As the gunfire erupted in his classroom, he blocked the door with his own body, giving his students enough time to escape through the windows. He sacrificed his life to save theirs. Just imagine, a man who survived the horrors of war, giving his life to save his students from a fate he knew all too well. His actions saved the lives of many students that day, but 32 others, including him, would not be so fortunate. By the time the police breached the doors, the massacre was over. Cho had killed 30 people in Norris Hall before turning the gun on himself, taking his own life. In just over 10 minutes, Cho had fired over 170 rounds, leaving behind a trail of destruction, grief, unanswered questions. The aftermath was harrowing. Families waiting desperately for news, only to be met with the worst possible outcome. The nation watched in horror as one of the safest places, a college campus, had turned into a war zone. The investigation that followed revealed a series of missed opportunities. Professors had reported Cho's disturbing behavior, but the warning signs were either ignored or not acted upon quickly enough. Cho left behind a video manifesto, an unsettling glimpse into his tormented mind. He blamed the world for his suffering, referred to his classmates as rich brats, and cast himself as the victim. But the real victims were the students and professors whose lives were cruelly cut short on that day. And while the world mourned, questions began to rise. How did someone with such clear signs of mental illness, someone declared a danger to himself by a court, still manage to buy the firearms he used? The system failed. Cho had been flagged, but his history didn't appear in the background checks. The warnings were there, but they were ignored. It makes you wonder how many lives could have been saved if the system had worked the way it should. Out of this darkness, there were moments of incredible bravery, like the professor's sacrifice and the other students who saved each other by blocking doors and finding ways to escape. These moments remind us of the strength of the human spirit, the power of human courage, even in the face of unimaginable horror. It's a reminder that we can do better. We have to do better. The Virginia Tech massacre wasn't just the story of one man's descent into madness. It was a failure of the system. But it's also a story of courage, a story of lives lost, yes, but also of lives saved. Just when we thought it couldn't get worse, tragedy struck again at Sandy Hook Elementary. December 14, 2012 was supposed to be just another day at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut. It was almost the holiday season and children were excited for winter break. But instead of laughter and joy, the sound of gunshots filled the air, making it one of the deadliest school shootings in history. By the end of it, 26 innocent lives, literally innocent, when I mean innocent, mostly young children, were stolen, leaving an entire nation in grief. Sandy Hook was known for its strong community and the warmth of its educators. But that day, as the school bell rang and students filled the halls, the unthinkable was about to happen. Just after 9:30 a.m., Adam Lanza, a troubled young man with a tragic past, entered the school, armed and ready to unleash devastation. 20-year-old Adam Lanza was born on April 22nd, 1992. Adam attended Sandy Hook Elementary for 4.5 years, and then he began in Newton Middle School in 2004. Students and teachers who knew him in high school described him as intelligent but nervous and fidgety. He avoided attracting attention and was uncomfortable socializing. He is not known to have had many close friends in school. Adam was a child who struggled from a young age. Growing up in a household that was increasingly strained, his parents divorced when he was just a teenager. His mother, Nancy, became his primary caretaker. But as Adam's mental health deteriorated, she struggled to connect with him. Nancy was said to be a gun enthusiast who owned several firearms and would often take her two sons to a local shooting range where they learned to shoot. Adam didn't have a criminal record, but had a history of mental health struggles. By the time he turned 20, Adam had withdrawn from the society, spending his days locked away in his room, playing violent video games and immersing himself in a world of darkness. He had descended into a world where his only communication with the outside world was with members of a cyber community, a small community of individuals that shared his dark and obsessive interest in mass murder. His disturbing online presence hinted at a growing obsession with mass shootings. But what was his motive? What led him to unleash such unspeakable violence? It was reported that Nancy, his mother, planned to move out of Newtown, which may have heightened his fear of leaving the comfort zone of his home. This, along with his worsening mental health and access to deadly weapons in his home, became a deadly combination that led to the tragic massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary on December 14, 2012. Hours before the shooting, sometime before 9:30 a.m. on December 14, 2012, Adam killed his mother, Nancy, in their home, shooting her 4 times in the head while she lay in bed in her PJs. Then, armed with a semi-automatic rifle and several handguns, he made his way to Sandy Hook Elementary in her car, a school filled with children no older than 7, where he would unleash unimaginable horror. At 9:35 a.m., Adam arrived at the school and forced his way inside, bypassing locked doors meant to keep students safe, sending the school into chaos. What followed was a nightmare. The first shots were fired in the front office. Principal Dawn Hodge-Sprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock ran toward the sound of gunfire, putting their lives on the line to protect the children in a desperate attempt to stop the shooter. Tragically, they were among the first to lose their lives. Their bravery was met with violence. Both women were beloved figures in the school, known for their dedication and care. Teachers scrambled to hide their students. Some huddled in closets, trying to shield their young ones from the horror. As Adam moved through the hallways, he entered a first-grade classroom near the entrance of the school. This is where most of the shooting took place. When Adam entered that classroom, he unleashed a terror of gunfire. In those horrifying moments, 20 children lost their lives, 8 boys and 12 girls, all between the ages of 6 and 7 years old. Among the victims was 6-year-old Noah Posner. He was known for his vibrant personality and his love for his family. His mother recalls his contagious laughter and how he would always look out for his twin sister, Ariel, who fortunately survived that day. He was shot multiple times, his short life filled with promise extinguished in an instant. The other victims, Charlotte Bacon, Daniel Baden, Olivia Angel, and so many others, each had their own stories. Charlotte loved animals and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Daniel was a budding artist who found joy in drawing. They were children filled with hopes and dreams, forever altered by the brutality of that day. In just under 5 minutes, Adam shot and killed 20 first graders and 6 staff members, all women, before taking his own life in a classroom as police arrived on the scene, leaving a trail of devastation that would haunt the nation forever. The aftermath was catastrophic. Families were left to mourn their lost children. Following the shooting, vigils and memorials sprung up across the nation, honoring those who lost their lives. Funerals were held for tiny coffins, and a small, tight-knit community struggled to make sense of the horror that had invaded their lives. How could such a massacre happen in an elementary school? How could children just starting their lives be gunned down in their classroom? This massacre reignited the debate over gun control in America again. Seems like people forget until another tragic event happens. Anyways, parents and advocates began calling for stricter gun control measures. In Connecticut, new legislation was passed to tighten gun laws, but the debate continues to this day. Adam Lazar's story doesn't just end with the shooting. It raises questions about mental health, access to firearms, and the warning signs that so often go unnoticed. The horror lasted only minutes, but the impact was felt and will be felt for generations to come. It's been over a decade since the tragedy at Sandy Hook, but the pain is still raw. Out of all the school shootings, this one hit me hard. Even as I revisited the case during my research, I found myself in tears once again. I'm honestly relieved that guns are not allowed in my country. We are already dealing with enough frustration. The thought of having weapons freely available here is chilling. People would be killed over the smallest things. As we remember the innocent lives lost in these 3 tragic cases, it's important we also commit to making real change. Let's honor their memories by working towards a safer world for every child. What do you think is the most effective way to prevent school shootings? Could better gun laws or mental health programs make a difference? And are there any African countries that permit civilians to carry guns legally? I'd love to hear thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please share it and consider supporting the channel by clicking the like and subscribe button as we continue to explore the events that shape our world. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.